Welcome to your Paraben's quick training. We're excited to give you some concise and precise methods and techniques for using the Paraben E3 platform in your examinations. Our topic for today is using the mobile case comparison function. Now let's get started with a quick outline of what we'll be covering. Today we're going to talk about which tools that it is available in. Currently, the case comparison function for mobile cases is available in the E3 Universal version and the E3 DS version. We're going to talk about what case comparison is, how it can be used, and then we're going to actually go through and use it in the tool. So I thought of doing an analogy to be able to really explain what the function of case comparison is. So case comparison takes two things that were identical at one time, as we have an example of two oranges, and compares them to see if something might have changed that would have made one have a problem with it. So an example would be I have my original case file, which is my orange that we see on the left-hand side that's still in its pristine acquisition format. And then I have my secondary orange to the right, where I've reacquired the phone after the opposing side of my case has processed it. In that process of comparison, I have discovered that they have added something into that case that was not there before, or they have removed something from that case. Thus, the orange has then become corrupt, or it is no longer in its pure state. The goal of case comparison is to allow you to be able to see when those changes have occurred. We use this for a variety of different functions that can be valuable for your organizations. First, we use it in validation and write protection. So we can show whether or not another tool or a tool has written to the device since our acquisition, and if there have been any changes that have occurred in that process. That's all done by rehashing the data associated with our case. This is a great way to be able to tell and validate your different technologies. So if I use tool A as my primary tool, I image it, and then I use tool B as a secondary. I'll go through and process the same device using tool B, and then I'll re-image it using tool A, and tool A will tell me if there have been any changes in that case. It's also a great way to go through and cross-check. So like I used in my example of the analogy with the oranges, if we have two different parties associated with the case, this allows me to see if the other party has made any changes to that device when it was in their possession and is brought back to me as a primary custodian. I do this with every forensic examination that we do in our lab, and it is part of our standard operating procedure. And then one of the other functions you have is if you're doing system audits. So if I have one of the Paraben group is going outside a country, we'll image their device before they go outside a country, and then when they get back from being outside of country, we'll image it again and see what changes have occurred. That way, if we see any changes that occurred within the file system or that could potentially be malware or other malicious exploits, we're able to see those by doing this case comparison function. It can be very handy, and it can be used in a variety of different functions in your lab, and it is a function that is unique to the Paraben E3 platform. So now we're going to go through it. We're going to actually use the case comparison function. The example I'm going to use is with an iOS device or an Apple iPhone device. To get started, we're going to go under the Tools tab, and you will find Mobile Evidence Compare as the function you're looking for. This is where you can compare two existing mobile evidence cases and check them for differences. This is our acquisition format, so it's the .ds file that will be used in the comparison. Now that we know where we're going to go actually into the tool and start working. Okay, so now we're into our tool. I've already had my case open, so I have an iPhone case. It's a Training's iPhone is the name of my case. We keep it pretty simple. And we see that I have a variety of different data in here. I finished my initial acquisition, that's great. And now I've had another acquisition come in from the other side, and I want to compare. So again, I go into my Tools menu, I pull my Mobile Evidence Compare wizard. Once it does that, it's actually going to start initially saying what type of cases you want to look at. So I have two options. I can either have a case open, which I already do, or I can add two different cases. So if I select the Browse option, I'm going to go to my desktop. I have Sample Evidence. I have my Smartphone 1 case, which I'm going to select to open. That is my original case. Once that opens, it's going to be able to prompt me for the other one that I can open over here. I'm going to again go into sample evidence. I have my smartphone 1, and this is my secondary image. So this is, for example, after I've gotten it back from the opposing side of my case, I've re-imaged my device, and now I'm going to open it and see if any changes occurred. Once that happens, the case comparer is going to go through and compare those two different cases. So we see immediately that we have some differences that have occurred in messages. Unparsed and recovered data, we have a different size down to the byte level, so 441 bytes are different from my original versus the one I got from the opposing side. And I can continue to go through, and I see I have different content in the client's plist file than I had over here, so this is my original, and I see I have differences over here. Other differences. I have different content here, and what I can do is, as you saw, as soon as I highlight it, I see additional details show below. And just to make it a little easier for all of us to see in the video, I'm going to just expand the dialogue a little larger than it is by default. From that point, I'm able to go through and actually scroll down, and I can see the direct details here versus the other content over here to see what is different between those two files. Whether it's an access date, if they actually have deleted some of the information associated with it, whatever it may be, I can get into that granularity as I go through and say, I have different content here in the SMS database, so that means that I could have a change in my content here. So I can look here and get my initial properties, and then if I double click on it, now I can actually see the database associated with it and say, okay, what has happened in detail here? And as I scroll down, I probably scrolled a little fast. Oh, there's my difference. There's one of them. I see here I have a difference of this versus this. Okay, so I have sequence number differences. And I can continue to go through in granularity, and you'll see little highlights of green here and there. And see any of those differences that occurred. So I say, we have a new number that occurred and a new SMS associated with it that was not in my original case file. That's important for notice because that means that was added while it was in possession of the other side. And then I can continue to go down through my list and compare. And you'll see a lot of these as you go through. Here's another new SMS that was after I had already done my original image, not in my original image. So this is a great way for me to go through and be able to see those differences as you go back and forth. Here's a huge difference. We see a brand new data associated with it. Multiple text messages have occurred and have been sent since my original image was made at the device. If I close that, I can go back over here and start looking through for additional data. And you'll see them all very easily highlighted here so that it's very easy for you to go through and see them. If you want to change any of the options, you have that available up here in the options menu where I can change the colors associated with them. So if you have a particular preference, you see that we have a new file or folder marked as kind of the lime green color, and we have different files marked with the blue highlight color, which is what we've been looking at here. Our other options we have from here is we can also generate a report. There's no reason to go through the main report wizard. We actually have a separate wizard associated with doing the case comparison function. So if I choose to do that, it's again from the file menu, I can hit next. I have two different options. I have an Excel or a PDF report. I'm going to choose to do my PDF mobile evidence case compare report. Hit next. I'm going to include the case information, the device information, and I'm going to choose to open it after it has generated. I'm just going to make it easy and do a test report to my desktop. I'm going to choose next, and now it's going to generate the report between the two different cases that I was looking at. Once it's finished, we'll see that I now have a new report that has automatically come up for me, and I can look at the table of contents of my case information. I didn't have a lot of my properties in there, as you can see. My first case, which is an Apple iPhone, I have the different version numbers. My second case, same Apple iPhone. And then the actual comparison results which conveniently marks all of those areas that we saw associated with our existing analysis I was just going through with you, and a very easy to follow report. You can go through and define what those colors are in the report. Obviously you see them much brighter here, so you're able to see when a file content has changed as opposed to a directory change associated with it. Either options, you see you have a lot of different choices when it comes to the case comparison options in Paraben's E3 platform. It's a very easy function to use, but a lot of people aren't noticing what an amazing tool it can be for you to validate your different cases and compare them with the other side. It's definitely a function that should become part of your SOP. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and come again for another Paraben Quick training.